All right, welcome back, everybody. So to wrap things up, we're going to talk about the legacies of Greece and Rome because when it comes to the history of Europe in particular, there really are two civilizations which have the most overwhelming influence on European culture, European political history, European social history, especially religious history, and that is Greece and Rome. They are the foundational civilizations of the European continent. So let's start off with Greece. Essentially, Greek culture is, especially here in the Western world, looked at as the basis of Western civilization. Greek culture, Greek philosophy, Greek art, especially Greek science, is going to influence the Western, i.e., European world for at least the next 1,000 years, um, well into even this millennia. The Greek pantheon of gods and Greek mythology has been a source of Western literature and cultural inspiration all the way up into modern times. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, um, all of the all of the movies with Sam Worthington, what's his name, The Immortals, that whole series of movies. Um, the beasts of Greek mythology are well known, the Hydra, the Minotaur. So there is a ton of, you know, influence on literature, influence on art. Greek styles of art, Greek themes in art are going to be copied all the way up through the Renaissance and into today. In terms of philosophy, especially the philosophy of Socrates, is going to it's going to form the basis for all philosophical and psychological analysis. Even up until modern times, the Socratic method of delivering the truth through questioning, basically sets the standard for all Western learning. Greek medicine establishes moral and ethical practices that are still followed today. All doctors, when they come out of medical school, are required to take the Hippocratic Oath in honor of Hippocrates, a very famous Greek doctor. Um, Greek advancements in science, basically for the next 1,000 years, are going to be the pinnacle of scientific understanding in Europe. Now, that's not to say that they are the pinnacle of understanding elsewhere in the world, because when we talk about the rise of Islam, we will talk about how Muslim scientists take the findings of Aristotle and Plato and Socrates and build and expand upon them. But at least in Europe, well into the Renaissance, the Protestant Reformation, and the Scientific Revolution, Aristotle and his ideas and his knowledge of the natural world is basically accepted as universal truth until it's challenged in the 15th century, which we'll get more into that. Now, another area in which Greece has a massive amount of influence is in terms of government and the ideas of citizenship. These are ideals that are copied and expanded upon in the 18th century in Europe, especially in the Enlightenment movement. Guys like Descartes, guys like you know Rousseau, guys like Montesquieu. They build upon a lot of these ideas, especially Socrates, of um, democracy and social and political equality. And most of these form the basis for what we now consider modern democracy. Greek methods of study, especially inductive reasoning, which is usually credited to Aristotle. They are the bedrock of the scientific method, which is you know essentially our method of knowing things about the physical and the natural world. Um, the creation of the scientific method in the 14th century is going to cause a massive explosion in scientific, natural, universal knowledge later on in this course. Greek authors and playwrights, Euripides and Sophocles, for the majority of human history, are the most copied, most performed, and most quoted playwrights in the Western world until Will Shakespeare shows up on the scene. And like I said a little bit earlier, thanks to Alexander and those Hellenistic empires, Greek knowledge and Greek methods are going to be spread throughout the Middle East, throughout Central Asia, throughout parts of northern India. And that foundation is going to help to create a golden age of culture, not only for the Guptas in India, but like we said later on in the Islamic world. Now, the Romans and their legacy is a bit more convoluted for a number of different reasons. Number one, because the Romans were significantly different than the Greeks. The Romans were much less philosophical. They were much more practical. They were very much like the Persians, in which they were not stuck hard and fast to their own culture. Because of the size of the Roman Empire and the diversity within it, the Romans, although they saw outsiders as barbarians, were very quick to adopt or tolerate other cultures in order to maintain political and economic unity and prosperity. The Greeks, for the majority of their history, were not an empire. There was not a lot of diversity. They did not have to be tolerant and accepting of other cultures. Even when Alexander does conquer this massive empire, the Greeks still establish themselves as a, you know, separate aristocratic class, and their culture becomes the gold standard even within that empire. So, because the Romans do build this massive empire, because the Romans are almost forced to be more culturally accepting than the Greeks, their culture is not as independent and standalone as the Greek is. Um, However, they do make many outstanding technical advancements. You know, from the video that you guys watch, you know that we owe concrete to them. Um, the Romans make a absolutely unmistakable contribution to law and the legal system. The 12 Tables of Rome are still one of the first things that you're going to study if you take a law course, freshman year, sophomore year of college. Um, they make numerous contributions to politics. The idea of a Senate or a separate legislative body comes from the Romans. Sorry. Linguistically, Latin makes huge contributions, especially in Europe. I mean, other than the Slavic and the Germanic languages, most of the languages of Europe have their roots in Latin, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, so on and so forth. Now, one of the cultural legacies of Rome, and you almost can't even attribute it to Rome, but in the long run you can, is the one that they were the least accepting of, which is Christianity. So, how does Christianity become the most enduring legacy of the Roman Empire? Well, as we know, in the beginning of Christian history, the Romans are not fond of Christian culture because Christian monotheism dictates that their covenant and their allegiance is to one God and one God only. And up to this point, the Romans really had only had to deal with one form of monotheism, and that was Judaism. And because of the history of the Hebrew people, the Jews were significantly more accommodating to Roman power than Christians were willing to be. Um, the Romans demanded that the emperor be worshipped as a god. The Jews, while never outright worshiping the Roman emperor as a god, did not outwardly deny it because, thanks to their history of being scattered and conquered by numerous empires, they understood the process of kind of getting along with bigger, more significant political powers. Christians, on the other hand, were much less tolerant. Christians openly denounced the worship of the emperor, and this was seen as a threat to the stability and the unity of the Roman Empire. So, after the crucifixion of Jesus by the Romans begin to actively persecute Christian communities. They begin to hunt down Christian sects and Christian enclaves. And unfortunately for them, this persecution simply reinforces the faith of these Christian followers. The more persecuted they are, the more it fuels their faith. Um, Christian martyrs become, part of Christian doctrine. They become celebrated and revered. The Romans and their massive infrastructure actually provide an avenue for Christianity to expand and to move about the empire, not freely, but much more openly and much more easily than other faiths that we've seen and other belief systems that we've talked about in this unit. Now, the Christian message, while we're not going to get into a ton of it, um, is a message of, obviously peace, hope, forgiveness, a better life after this one. Christianity appealed to, just like Buddhism, the lowest classes. It appealed to those people who had very little hope for this life and looked forward to something better in their afterlife. And that appealed to the lower classes, and the Christian intolerance of worshiping the Roman emperor in the minds of the Romans presented a real threat to their government. This, I guess you could call it, escapist religion preached to people, don't focus on this life. Focus on the worship and obedience to God, and you will be rewarded in the next life. And to the Romans, that is a significant threat. They need those lower classes, those peasant farmers, those slaves, and they need their obedience to Rome. They need their focus to be on serving Rome. And so the more that Romans try to stamp out the message of Christianity, the more and more it seemed justified. This idea of love thy enemy. Um, as the Romans continued their onslaught, the Christians just simply embraced it. And it just, again, justified the message of Christianity even more. Also, this is around the period of the beginning of Rome's decline. The Roman Empire has become too large. It has become unmanageable. They're starting to face external threats. They're starting to face bankruptcy, food shortages. And as the empire declines, Roman citizens are, you know, in a state of panic. Rome has been the sole authority for most of these people for their entire lives and for centuries before that. And as the power of Rome starts to weaken, people begin looking to somewhere else for their safety and for their security. And the Christian message provides comfort and it provides hope of a better life after this one. So, again, Rome cracks down, the message continues to spread. As things get worse for Rome, the Christian message, starts to ring more and more true to its followers. Eventually, after a century, 2 centuries, Rome, or at least the people in the power structure in Rome, begin to see that the tide is turning, that Christianity is a real force. It is not going away. And rather than combat it, they decide to turn this, very, very intolerant, well, I don't want to say intolerant, but this very fervent faith of these Christian people to their advantage. So the Roman power structure decides to start to give in. Persecution of Christians is outlawed in 313 by the Edict of Milan. The Roman Emperor Constantine converts to Christianity in 337, and that essentially makes Christianity the religion of the Roman state. So now Christianity has gone from an unfavored, unliked, persecuted religion to a favored, patronized religion of the state. So now Christians and their message can take full advantage of the size and the infrastructure of Rome. And once Constantine converts and Christianity becomes favored, the Christian faith begins to spread like wildfire. By the year 500, the borders of Christianity are essentially the borders of Rome. Now, while Christianity is on the rise, Rome itself is still on the decline. However, Rome is still a very large and powerful player, and there are still major cities within the Roman Empire. And four in particular, Rome, Constantinople, Jerusalem, and Alexandria in Egypt, become the four centers of Christian authority. And there is a major bishop of the Christian church in each one. Now, that's going to be important going forward because the rivalry between these centers of Christian authority is going to have massive implications for the Christian church going forward, which we'll talk about in about three or four units down the road. Now, eventually, Rome hits a breaking point. In the 5th century CE, the invasions of Rome by Germanic tribes and nomads from Central Asia reaches critical mass. And in 476, the western half of the Roman Empire is defunct. It is destroyed. It is wiped out. Fast forward about 200 more years, and Islam rises out of Arabia. And we'll talk in about 2 units about how quickly Islam explodes out of Arabia and spreads not only the faith, but the Muslim power structure throughout the Middle East, North Africa, into Europe. And the speed in which it does it essentially wipes Christianity out of the Middle East. Not completely, but for all intents and purposes, it pushes all Christian powers out of the region. So what you have, and one of the reasons why Christianity is still looked at as a legacy of the Roman Empire, is because after the fall of the West and the supremacy of these Germanic polytheistic tribes and the fall of the Middle East to Islam and the Islamic Caliphate, the Eastern Roman Empire becomes really the only safe haven for Christianity worldwide. There are Christians sprinkled in and about North Africa. There are Christians sprinkled in and about the Middle East. There are Christians still in Europe, but Christianity has no political power. There is no Christian state remaining except for the Eastern Roman Empire. And the Eastern Roman Empire is going to be the one entity that preserves and nurtures Christianity again for the next 600, 700 years until it reestablishes itself in Europe and Europe then becomes the home and the heart of the Christian faith.